The pace of technology change is accelerating at a more rapid pace than ever before. We're now seeing just a few years between each major advancement or industry revolution moment, not hundreds or thousands of years. As global industry leaders, we're always looking for breakthrough moments or the next Industry 5.0 advancement that will predict our future. And one of the things we believe that will contribute to this and be a game changer for us is in the area of artificial intelligence or AI and virtual reality. AI has already evolved to the point where machines have realized they're smarter than humans. In March 2016, the DeepMind AI technology being developed by Google beat the best human player in Go. The move that changed everything was Game 2, Move 37. And why was that so interesting? It was a move that came not from machine learning, but true artificial intelligence. The model had been playing Go against itself, not from a feed of previous human games. So during that period of self-learning, it became better than any human player. Was that a defining moment in human history and the advancement of artificial intelligence? The question is, what's next? What role will AI play in the human versus technology landscape? My name is Richard Healy, and I'm the CIO of our Banking and Financial Services Group of Macquarie, and I'm very pleased to be joined today by Ian Edwards from Facebook, who will help us explore exactly that. Ian is the Global Connection Planning Director at Facebook and has been with the company since 2015. Prior to Facebook, Ian spent 14 years working in planning and strategy at some of the biggest agencies in London. He's the contributing author to what is a 21st century brand, New Thinking from the Next Generation of Agency Leaders. And he recently recorded a podcast series for Marketing Week on where human creativity meets artificial intelligence in marketing. And he's just released a podcast for Walk, a company that provides the latest evidence, expertise, and guidance to make marketeers more effective on the true value of attention. Welcome, Ian. Ian, to begin, would you like to tell us a little bit about your role, about yourself and including your role in Facebook?
Yeah, well, first of all, great to be with you today and really excited for the conversation. I guess some people might be wondering why does Facebook have a connection planning team, which in some markets is called comms planning? The idea really is that we recognize that Facebook is one part of your channel mix, your marketing mix. And actually we have to understand how our channels and our ad products work alongside other channels. So that's one part of it. But when I think about the specific role, what I try and do and what the team tries and does is help advertisers and help businesses navigate the future and navigate to have success on the platform. And I think about that in two ways. One way is this long-term view, so like a compass, what's the direction of travel, where are we going over the next 5, 10 years, and the areas you should double down on. And then kind of providing a map, so what's the next turn you should make, what should you be doing in your planning now to take you on that journey and make sure you don't go down any dead ends or off any, drop off any, take that unfortunate turn that you want. So it's that kind of longer-term planning and then shorter-term execution, built on insight, built on evidence that we try to deliver for our partners.
Obviously, Facebook with 2.2 billion users, they get a personalized news feed each day. It's an astonishing use of technology and AI. That's where you are now. Where are you headed?
Yeah, I mean, actually, across the platforms, it's actually over 3 billion now in terms of the user base. And what's really interesting, is the fact that people want a personalized content. Algorithmically driven media overtook kind of traditional editorially driven media in 2020 in many markets and in the UK. But we saw that transition happen for all audiences. So that ability to connect people with what they want to see and provide personalized experiences is critical. I mean, that's where we are at the platform. I mean, there are many ways I could take this, but, I think what we've seen over the last 12 months is a broadening out of people using digital. So we've seen new audiences come into digital, come to our platform to connect with people that matter to them, but also to connect with businesses in new ways. So we've seen this breadth, but we've also seen this depth. And I think that's what's really interesting is you've got new audiences coming in, and then you've got pretty much everyone learning new digital skills and learning how to use technology to connect. And I think that's creating interesting opportunities for us to serve businesses and communities better. But it's also, you know, creating great moments of innovation for marketeers and for advertisers to connect with their audiences in new and exciting ways. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into this, but, you know, some of the big things we've seen, these huge spikes in messaging. You know, we've seen, you know, nearly a doubling in messaging, more than 120 billion messages sent every day, a huge increase in messaging between people and businesses, a lot of that driven by AI. We've seen the rise of augmented reality, virtual reality, really, I think, having a moment. We've also seen people going live from our platforms doubling. Video conferencing, video calling, all of those experiences, all of that depth, I think, is just, you know, fantastic innovation that's creating new ways for people to connect with those that matter to them and connect also, you know, obviously with businesses as well.
Thank you for that, Ian, because that leads nicely to a question I had for you around augmented reality and virtual reality. So with the emergence of 5G and even 6G, how will this drive the augmented and virtual reality technologies? And what do you think these will look like?
We believe this is one of those trends that is going to define the next 15 years. You know, we've invested in Facebook Reality Labs. So, you know, I think, you know, cutting edge people and engineers building, you know, what we think is the future in this space. And I think just to put this into perspective, because I do think sometimes people think AR, VR, is it just a bit of a gimmick? Actually, we kind of think it's going to be the next computing platform. It's going to be that significant a change. It's going to be a fundamentally different computing platform and will be the next computing platform over the next 15 years. And, you know, when this really came home to me was, you know, some of our leaders talk about this as the next computing platform. What does that mean? Well, if you look back in history, every, you know, 15 years or so, roughly 15 years, there is a new computing platform emerges. So if you go back to the 1950s, you know, the big mainframe with, you know, cards with holes punched into it, taking up the whole room, that's kind of the first generation. Gradually, you have then different generations that kind of come in. You get to home PCs. Then, you know, kind of in, you know, late 90s, 2000s, you have kind of the internet. 2010, the smartphone. And then, you know, we think kind of going forward, so, you know, 2010, the smartphone, 15 years, 2024, 2025, this technology will be the new platform and how we interact, you know, with all of that technology. And, you know, to understand that profound difference, and it may sound strange to us, is I think you always have to jump back 2 generations. You know, if you went to 1990 and brought someone, you know, fast forward someone to today, when they didn't have mobile phones and they were looking at smartphones and what we were doing with smartphones and just walking around, you know, getting onto a bus, getting onto the tube and seeing what we were doing with our phone, it would blow their minds. And I think that's where we're going to get to with AR, VR. But it's going to take time for us to realize that future. But I think over the next 15 years, it's going to just, you know, transform the way that we interact with each other, interact with the environment. And, you know, through that, you know, that future might well be a future where we don't have a phone in the same way that we do today. We don't physically have phones, which I think is one of those interesting things that might come out of this.
Well, let's talk about that, Ian, a little more. My history, by the way, laughing when you mentioned the mainframe, I remember doing my first Fortran 77 program through a set of punch cards. It's strange to even think about. But as we look forward, what do you think humans will like about that world that you've just described? How do you think it will drive human behaviour? And what do you think they will perceive the risks to be?
I mean, those are some big questions there. I mean, I think it's going to just change every single aspect of our life. You know, I think it will change how we work undoubtedly. You know, it will, you know, one of the things is interesting. It will change our environment because of what we need around us. You know, we won't need a computer screen or something like this, because if you've got that future where you've got augmented reality and you can just project onto your desk a virtual computer and you can type. You don't need a TV sitting in the corner of your living room. You just can project and see exactly what that will be. Obviously, the technology that I'll be talking through here will be through wearables, so things like glasses that allow you to kind of do that in a seamless way. It will change the nature of presence. It will change what it feels like to be with other people through technology. It will feel much closer. So when you're separated, as we are now by, half the globe, and it's good. We feel connected here now, but it will actually feel like we're almost in the same room through this kind of technology. That distance will bring us, closer together, and that's a very profound change. That will then change where you can live. It will change how you socialize. It will change, literally everything, I think. And, the benefits is that this technology will be very intuitive. It will be very linked to, what do you need in that moment? It will be very easy for you to control and manipulate your environment to suit you, and I think there will be huge benefits in that space. So, I'm on the side that this is going to be a positive change, and technology, as we've seen over the last 12 months, technology is a powerful way for us to connect with each other, and that will just change exponentially. And the possibilities are incredibly exciting.
Already, Ian, we've seen that pushback, though, in some areas of society about being too wedded to your device, which at the moment is a mobile phone. In the future, we think it will be something different. What do you think in terms of that risk, though, for the human versus technology, or the human-technology interface? Have Facebook given any thought to that, to sort of that risk paradigm?
Yeah, there's a couple of things to say there. First of all, time spent when new technology comes along, it's important to have a balanced life. You shouldn't just do one thing of anything. I remember, when I was growing up, my parents were on at me the whole time about TV. You're watching too much TV. It's dominating, what you're doing as a kid. That's that. And mobile phones is essentially the TV. I whinge at my children about too much, screen time, and they need to have that balance. And, at Facebook, absolutely, we believe that, it's about meaningful time and giving people control of how much time they spend on the platforms. But also when they're on the platform, making sure that what they're doing is meaningful. And, obviously, we changed the algorithm a couple of years ago to connect people with the most meaningful content, rather, which was social, which was their friends, their family, the things that people were interacting with. And we think that that's a much more positive experience than just passive consumption. And that, as we build these new technologies, the positive side is incredible, but you still need that balance, and we still need to educate ourselves, our children, provide that control to make sure that we're not, it doesn't become overbearing and dominating. And and I think that's always been the case with technology. A balanced life, balance in everything is important. And with this technology, we need that's nothing different.
In a conversation that we had, it was really exciting, your view of the future. I'm going to ask you a really tough question here, and obviously, people as they look into the future, you never quite get it right. But I'm interested in your view. It's now 2035. And how has AI technology empowered people to innovate and invest for a better future? Can you even sort of imagine how AI has developed in that time?
AI is obviously very different. AR and augmented reality and virtual reality, quite different technology. AI is so broad. It's like oxygen, powering life in a way, because oxygen, life develops in many, many different ways, and oxygen's a key component for everything. But the outcomes are so different. AI, if you think about where we are today, in terms of the kind of marketing landscape, where we are at the moment is kind of connecting people with content, performance marketing, right message, right people, right time, all of that kind of stuff. And so I'm just sort of narrowing it down to one, a sphere. I think the other bit that AI will fundamentally change next is going to be kind of like personal assistance, customer assistance, helping people sort of connect to what they want, that personalization. You know, we're essentially connected to everything all of the time. What's the filter on that? How do you start to connect with what is important to you? And I think, you know, AI will help solve a lot of the problems, you know, in that space. Will, you know, based on your experience, your preferences and things like that, it will just serve you a highly personalized experience, you know, in your life more generally. And the predictive power of that will, you know, just make every you know, lots of different parts of it much better. And then I do think that AI, you know, I think we talked a little bit about sort of transformational ideas. You know, AI will solve some of the biggest, you know, has the potential to solve some of the biggest problems that we're facing. You know, whether that's, you know, in medicine and areas in that kind of space, and, you know, better diagnosis of conditions, you know, all the way through to, you know, essentially, you know, education will be transformed. All of these different areas will have AI seamlessly embedded within them, I think. And, you know, that idea of, you know, that Alan Turing set out, you know, 70 years ago around a Turing test of you know, that experience of interacting with a machine, with a computer. Does it feel human? I think, you know, certainly in narrow fields, we'll pass that test. It won't be general AI, but it will be, you know, the tests around specific functions. It will feel like interacting with another human. So, yeah, it will be woven through all of our life, I think, and you know, and have many implications.
Ian, if there's one industry trend that is more relevant today, what would that be?
I mean, there's lots of areas. Obviously, we've covered AR, VR, and I think there's lots to come in that space. You know, I think, you know, this area around assistance and messaging, I think is really interesting. And I think, you know, messaging, not Messenger or WhatsApp, are you know, a dominant way that people want to connect with people, and they want to connect with businesses. And you know, I think that area for tech and AI, I think you need to have a messaging strategy going forward, whatever kind of business that you're in. If you don't have a team dedicated to messaging, looking at automation, looking at, you know, some of the AI function and capabilities, I think you're going to get left behind. You know, we've just launched payments on WhatsApp in India and Brazil. That will continue if you look to the east. Or east from where I am, you know what's happening there in terms of the, you know, that how messaging is so integral and weaved through people's lives. I think that's one area where I think there should be really, you know, deep focus. And a number of people have said to me, "No, I've tried, you know, chatbots, or I've tried Messenger for my business. It doesn't work for me." You know, and that's because, you know, you haven't quite got it right. That is the equivalent of in 1999 saying, "I've tried these website things, you know, it's just not for my business." And it's that significant a moment that, you know, I think messaging is becoming its own medium, and people need to really, you know, dig in and understand how to use that. So that for me is like a really interesting, significant area, which sometimes it felt like we've had a couple of false starts. But I think, you know, through what's happened over the last 12 months, that's at the heart of what we kind of need to do, or what businesses should be, you know, really leaning into.
That's great, Ian. Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us today. As we draw a close on our discussion, I want to thank Ian and Facebook for an engaging discussion and his amazing insights on what our future may hold in the AI space. I hope you found it as fascinating as I did. I believe we're moving through a period of technology that has accelerated through the use of powerful, highly available and cheap technology provided by the cloud companies. I hope today has interested you enough for you to start your own investigation or project on where the future may lead us.